Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another live-action commentated match for Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today's match is going to be featuring two very competent players. On the left, we have Alexander Cimadon, running the likes of the Astra Militarum Warlord Colonel Straken. And on the right, we happen to see a player by the name of Troes Berthelsen, and he's going to be running Old Zogwort, a somewhat seldom played but still powerful Ork Warlord. In assessing our opening planet layout, planet number 1 is going to be Barless, which triggers a random card discard. Planet 2 is Eloth, which allows players to tutor the top 3 cards of their deck. Planet 3 is Farron, which routes non-warlord units. And planet 4 is going to be Taurus, which rewards players for keeping their unit count as low as possible. Planet 5 is going to be Aatrox Prime, which deals out damage to adjacent planets or HQs, and just considering the potential for both of these warlords to just fill the board with tokens, both Taurus and Aatrox Prime are going to be interesting points of contest indeed. But our initiative token happens to be in the possession of Alexander, and at this point we've already started to see some cards deployed. We see a Catachan Outpost and Ammo Depot for Alexander, 2 supports, 1 to draw cards, 1 to bolster attack value, and on the opposite end of the table we ended up seeing Zogwart's signature support, his Zogwart's Hovel, which as soon as Zogwort is declared a defender, he's going to be generating additional Snotlings tokens. So every time that Zogwort commits to a planet, declares an attack, or is declared a defender, we're going to be seeing a 1/1 Ork Snotlings token put into play. Very few army units thus far, but we did end up seeing a copy of the Shoot-A-Mob placed at planet number 1 by Zogwort. That's potentially going to be winning him a couple cards, and we end up seeing Straken's command squad, Colonel Straken's signature army units, splash down on planet number 3, so it's potentially going to be winning a couple different resources. In taking a look at victory conditions at the present moment, I don't think we actually see... No, I'm sorry, we end up seeing as early as planet number 5, a player could potentially win through capturing Farron, Taurus, and Aatrox Prime. Trolls, his action is to put out a second copy of Shoot-A-Mob at planet number 4, which is going to be Taurus, and especially considering just how many Snotlings tokens that Old Zogwort can accrue during the combat phase, that's going to be absolutely integral that he protect Taurus to the best of his ability. Both players are starting to run out of resource tokens, but we end up seeing an Evil Sunz Warbiker at planet number 1 for Alexander, so he's paired with Orks. We've yet to see what exactly Zogwort is paired with, but if there happens to be a Warlord touching down at planet number 1, that's going to be a 4-attack army unit for Alexander, and we end up seeing a copy of Snakebite Thug played out for Trolls to planet 3, and a Tallarn Raiders at planet number 2. So a lot of command icons on the board, very strong command presence for our Ork player, made all the more powerful as we see a copy of Promotion attached to that Snakebite Thug. So the Tallarn Raiders and that Evil Sunz Warbiker on opposite ends of the table are each going to stand to become far more powerful as soon as a Warlord touches down at that planet. So both players are triggering their command dials, figuring out where exactly do they want to send their Warlords. Straken only happens to amplify warriors and soldiers present at his planet. So are we going to see Straken or Zogwort try and win Barless? That random card discard isn't absolutely crucial toward either player winning. Aatrox Prime, Taurus, and Farron are going to be much more important. But we see Zogwort touch down on planet number 1. He immediately generates a 1/1 Snotlings token, and that Evil Sunz Warbiker, although Alexander does not have initiative at planet number 1 despite possession of that token, is going to be attacking for 4 if it can survive the attack of that Shoot-A-Mob. And dissimilarly, Colonel Straken ended up going to planet number 3, so that's potentially going to allow Alexander to route any of these units further along the board. Things along the lines of that Tallarn Raider, which will be at planet 2, planet 1 next turn, or that Shoot-A-Mob. So just in regard to economy, it looks like 2 cards for Trolls, something like 2 additional cards for Trolls, 2 resource for Alexander, a card and a resource for Trolls. So our Ork player definitely came out favorable in that respect. It looks like combat starts, the shoot-a-mob takes a swing at that Evil Sun's Warbiker, and we end up seeing a 1 shield value card. I can't quite tell if that's a glorious intervention, but it looks as though that will save that Evil Sun's Warbiker from just being outright obliterated. So the Catachan Outpost beefs up that Evil Sun's Warbiker to a total of 6 attack value. The Ammo Depot ends up drawing Alexander an additional card, and I can only imagine that Evil Sun's Warbiker is about to hurt Old Zogwort in a very, very big way. So the Warlord is going to end up taking a swing of 6. What exactly are we going to see? We do see a Snotlings token generated. Looks like we discarded a copy of Squigify. I believe that happens to be a 2 shield icon card, but let's figure out here. How much damage? I believe that's a stack of 4 damage tokens, but it's a little bit difficult to tell. So, looks like in any case, Zogwort is really hurting that Snotlings token, takes a swing, ends up killing off that Evil Sun's Warbiker, but definitely a fantastic early game blow. In regard to triggering Barless's ability, we take a look. Clearly, Alexander has 3 cards remaining in hand. 1 random discard ended up being a very powerful copy of that Snakebite Thug. So the first planet did happen to be won by Zogwort, but at what cost? That's definitely a Warlord that stands to become far less effective once he is bloodied, once he ends up losing his ability, and seeing as how we've yet to see Iridial present upon this board, that's very nasty indeed. If Colonel Straken can get an early bloody, that's going to nullify just so many of those accursed little Snotlings tokens, but we are going to see battle taking place at Farron. Colonel Straken has a total of 2 attack value, 6 hit points. He's making his command squad a 3/2 attacker. The initiative token does happen to be in the possession of the Astra Militarum player. He can only swing for 3 at the Snakebite Thug. It's not going to be enough to kill it even without shields, but as soon as the Snakebite Thug takes a single swing, its forced reaction of putting a damage on it is without shields going to cause it to be killed. So, Colonel Straken ends up taking an attack of 3. Are we going to see any shield icons? We can very clearly see a preemptive barrage in the hands of our Colonel Straken employing player, but are we going to see that used as shields? Colonel Straken, I suppose one of his greatest downfalls is just that he very much has to be in the thick of things in regard to combat in order to get AM units to benefit from his ability. So we do actually see that preemptive barrage, a 2 shield icon card used as shields. That Snakebite Thug simply dies. No point in shielding that unless he was interested in retreating it. Long story short, it would have made for a very expensive unit to keep in play through merit of constantly discarding shields. And Zogwort doesn't happen to have the HP-friendly attachments that Nosdrag does. In regard to triggering Farron's ability, though, it looks as though ultimately Colonel Straken chooses to target a shoot-a-mob that had been located at planet number 4, and now I'm quite curious to see what exactly comes out. Looks like our new planet number 5 is going to be Yvonne. Both players are going to end up drawing 2 cards, generating 4 resource tokens, and we can't exactly see what our players drew. I can definitely see a copy of Staging Grounds. I believe I saw a copy of No Mercy in Alexander's hand, but I could definitely be wrong. Both of our players are assessing their present resources, and it looks like our Orc player, he's got a copy of Staging Ground of his own. He's got an Iron Guard Recruits. It looks like maybe a copy of Zogwart's Runt Herders. So the initiative token is at this present moment passed to our Old Zogwort player. He's got quite a few units in his HQ, and I'm curious to see how things go here. A little bit of glare present on our table, but at planet number 2, an Iron Guard Recruits is going to be played opposite Straken's command squad. So that command squad has no damage. As soon as it leaves play, we see a Guardsman token effectively replace it, and the 2 commands from the 2 command icons from the recruits is going to quite handily trump the single command icon for that command squad. So our Orc player is still set up quite favorably for command, and once again, in regard to actual win conditions, it could potentially come down to Aatrox Prime. Our Orc player does happen to possess Barless, but unless we're wanting to see this game go out to our initial planet number 6, you know, it's, I suppose, wise that he try to win a few battles between now and then. But another copy of the Iron Guard Recruits goes out to Aatrox Prime. We end up seeing Ammo Depot Exhaust, presumably drawing a card for Alexander. And now we're kind of remaining to see how exactly things are going to play out. I suppose just in regard to crucial battles, Taurus is going to be of the paramount importance. Our Orc player is starting to see quite a few units in play. Zogwort isn't bloodied yet, so unless that reaction is not triggered, it's just going to be a glut of Snotling tokens filling the table. So Taurus would be a reasonable choice for Colonel Straken to go to, or otherwise he might try and do something like try to deprive his opponent of command. Looks as though I kind of missed it, but both players have a staging ground out at this point, and that's going to allow them to effectively deploy units during the command phase. So it's a little bit of a nice deploy action stall in that it's just a one-cost support, and then it helps add some much-needed surprise to our Orc player and also our Astra Militarum player. So we end up seeing a copy of Shoot 'em Mob put out to planet number 3 by Alexander. He happens to possess a copy of Evil Sun's Warbiker and No Mercy still left in his hand, and let's see how exactly this goes. Looks like Alexander has put down his hand. Both players are choosing where exactly they'd like to send their warlords. We've got two different, colloquially referred to as warlord groupies at planet number 1. That Evil Sun's Warbiker is going to be swinging for 4, and the Tallarn Raiders is going to be swinging for 2 instead of 0, if either player ends up sending their warlord there. What's a little bit of a trick, though, is the initiative is in the hands of Zogwort, so unless we see Straken go to planet number 2, basically the Warbiker without a warlord present can just simply kill off the Raiders, but if not, if Zogwort goes, he might stomach an additional attack here, but it looks like Zogwart's ultimately going to end up going to planet number 5, and Straken is going to go down to planet number 1, so that's going to quite conveniently allow Straken to obliterate that copy of Tallarn Raiders, very much tutor a few different cards, and it looks as though for command it's going to be 2 cards won by Alexander, 2 resources for Zogwort, 1 resource, 1 card for Alexander, 1 resource, 1 card for Trolls, and it looks like an additional resource for Trolls. So kind of an interesting choice to deposit those 2 Shoot 'em Mobs down at planet number 5 by Zogwort. I'm curious as to what his rationale is here, but looks like combat is indeed going to occur at Eloth. And again, the ability on the line is tutoring the top 3 cards of your deck for whatever exactly you'd like. The Evil Sun's Warbiker takes a swing for 4, ends up quite handily destroying that copy of the Tallarn Raiders. They're immediately destroyed, and now we're taking a brief little assessment of those top 3 cards. What exactly is Alexander going to draw? Looks as though I saw one of the options as being the Omega Zero command post, which is his signature support that just allows his economy and combat ability to just potentially snowball out of control, because for each and every command struggle won, if you can put a guardsman token into play, that's incredibly powerful. So I suppose let's see what exactly he ultimately chooses. And then in regard to Yvarn, planet number 5, I can't really see either of these players triggering or wanting triggered that battle ability, just because all of these units we've seen thus far are so incredibly inexpensive, and given the presence of staging grounds on the battlefield, I can't really see players running more than just a scarce tiny little handful of over 2 cost units, because any other cost is entirely ineligible to be targeted by staging ground. And that staging ground, even though Zogwart's going to have the initiative, it could potentially allow that Snakebite Thug that we see in Alexander's hand to touch down at planet number 5 and potentially end up bloodying Nosdrag. But let's see how this goes. Looks like Eloth is indeed won by Alexander. He's got 1 blue technology icon, and then Barlas confers 1 green strong point icon to Zogwort. So planet number 1 is gone. The only additional battle we're going to be seeing is at Yvarn. I suppose in assessing resources at the moment, I see maybe 3 for Alexander. I see maybe 3, maybe 2. The playmat makes it a little bit difficult to tell for Trolls, but to no one's surprise, we end up seeing that copy of Snakebite Thug touchdown. We also see a copy of Goth Boys touchdown, which is very curious indeed. I'm not exactly... Okay, that was indeed a misplay. He ended up picking the Tallarn Raiders, which are going to be attacking for 2. I was going to say the 0-2 Goth Boys outside of anywhere but the first planet probably aren't going to be doing too much. So he must have mistaken one of those for a Warlord amplifying unit. But The Tallarn Raiders are going to be attacking for 2. The initiative token does indeed happen to be in the possession of Zogwort. We've got those shoot-em-mobs exhausted. There's a Snotling token sitting at that planet, and of course, as soon as combat concludes, all Snotling tokens are going to be cleared. So what exactly are we going to see? There's this Snakebite Thug sitting there. Looks as though Zogwort is going to use his first combat action in order to retreat. Yes, so Zogwort plays it very safe. I guess Trolls may not have any shield icons, or he's just wanting to play it super safe. We end up seeing the Snakebite Thug take a swing at a Snotling token. Quite wise, so the Snotling token is destroyed. Now the Tallarn Raiders is attacking for 0. Snakebite Thug ends up taking itself a point of damage, dealing itself a point of damage that's unshielded. And now everything is going to ready. Do we see either player retreat? Those Tallarn Raiders are essentially going to be useless since Zogwort retreated, so a little bit of a misplay there. And now the shoot-em-mobs are going to end up taking a swing, so Snakebite Thug takes 2 points of damage. Snakebite Thug is able to kill off a copy of Shoot-em-Mob. The Snakebite Thug destroys itself, and it's immediately replaced as a warrior by an Elysian drop team, or an Elysian assault team. So they're going to be a 2-1 attacker. I believe it's now Alexander's turn to attack. He ends up taking a swing, killing off that copy of the Shoot-em-Mob. Tallarn Raiders once again attacks for 0, and it looks as if this battle is going to be indeed won by Alexander. So quite wisely, those Tallarn Raiders end up retreating. Absolutely no sense in just completely wasting those, so we'll have to see if they eventually make a little bit of a difference, but definitely not a tremendously strong play there. So we end up moving into our headquarters phase. It seems as though I believe that we saw Yvarn triggered. I think that Evil Sun's Warbiker was put into play, so that's pretty cool. I don't believe Old Zogwort ended up putting anything into play. I think he's maybe got 2 cards in hand, but we move into our headquarters phase. We end up drawing generating 4 resource tokens, end up drawing 2 cards for both players, and now it's going to be, you know, kind of anybody's game at this point still. Old Zogwart's got a fair bit of damage on him. Colonel Straken is no longer entirely hale, and just in trying to assess both players' hands, I see Zogwort with a hell of a lot of different army units in his hand. We end up seeing Alexander, who is possessing our initiative token. We see a Shoot-em-Mob splash down at our new planet number 5, which is Karnath, so it could trigger Aatrox Prime, it could target Yvarn, it could target Farron, or our present planet number 2, which, thanks to Glare, I can't actually recall what that planet is. But, oh, it's Taurus. So planet number 2 is presently Taurus, and I believe it's the deploy action of our Old Zogwort players. So what exactly are we going to see? We've got a glut of supports in play. Slowly but surely, Colonel Straken is starting to establish himself in both an economic and military sense, and we end up seeing both players put out a copy of Gothboist, planet number 1. So the economic advantage is still very much in the hands of Zogwort in regard to winning the 2 resources at Farron. Routing is definitely always a very powerful effect, but that Evil Sun's Warbiker is going to be incredibly nasty entering play alongside Straken. We end up seeing a copy of the Iron Guard recruits put out to planet number 5. We see Alexander trigger his copy of Ammo Depot, and just absolutely fantastic stalling. Doesn't cost him any resources whatsoever, and potentially just allows him all the more information here. So our Zogwort player is starting to run out of resources. We see a copy of the Zogwart's Runt Herders put out to planet number 4, and that's as soon as it takes damage, it generates a Snotlings token, but unfortunately, those tokens are still vulnerable to being destroyed by Zogwort at the end of the combat round, and really the only, well, frankly, even if Zogwort ends up bloodied, he's still going to be destroying those Snotling tokens. He doesn't actually lose his penalty when bloodied. We do see a copy of the Rattling Deadeye put out to planet number 2, so that helps Alexander secure his command icon win over that planet, and since he's going to be losing the initiative token, that sets him up very favorably for the following turn to potentially defend Taurus. So that Catachan outpost with the 1-1 ranged attacker is absolutely fantastic, and we end up seeing the final resource for Trolls used to put out a rogue trader at planet number 5 there. So Karnath has got a lot of economy brewing. Looks like there's a lot of different stuff to see, but our players are slowly but surely deciding where exactly are they going to be sending their commanders. I can't quite tell with that token, but it looks like Straken ends up going to planet number 3, and curiously, Zogwort also goes to planet number 3. I'm thinking both of our players are going to try to want to just chip away at some of their swarming enemy units here. Certainly if Aatrox were to fire at planet number 2, that Rattling Deadeye, that Shoot-'em-Mob would be very nice to see destroyed. But just in regard to overall command, looks like 2 resources for Trolls at planet number 1, 1 resource, 1 card for Alexander. It's going to be looking like 1 card, 1 resource for Trolls at planet number 3, a resource at planet number 4 for Trolls, and then Trolls is going to get 2 resources, 1 card at planet number 5. So just absolutely fantastic economic command struggle showing for Old Zogwort throughout this video. But let's see what exactly is going to happen at planet number 1. Remember that both players happen to have a copy of Staging Ground to put low-cost units into play. The initiative token does happen to be in the possession of Alexander. He takes his 3/2 Goth Boys and takes a swing at Trolls' copy of the 3/2 Goth Boys. And those Iron Guard recruits, even though they're not attacking for nothing, they're not exactly the most formidable of combat units, and that'll allow potentially this Goth Boys to kill off both of those units here. So what exactly are we going to see? We end up seeing a copy of the Weird Boy stick, Zogwart's signature attachment, discarded, and now we've got that 3/2 attack entirely negated. The Goth Boys are going to be taking a swing at the 2/2 Straken's command squad, and are we going to be seeing a 2 shield card used by Alexander in order to spare that unit its life, or is he going to accept its death and simply replace it with one of those little guardsman tokens? And of course, we do end up seeing that unit destroyed. It's going to be replaced by a 1/2 guardsman token. Colonel Straken, of course, is nowhere to be found, so he's not actually able to confer his additional +1 attack to that relatively durable little token. So the 1/2 guardsman token is in play. It by itself is in no danger of being able to kill off in one fell swing either of the opposing Zogwort-controlled units, but we still happen to have that copy of Staging Ground. It looks like something along the lines of 5 or 6 resource tokens for Zogwort, but still 3 for Alexander, so it looks as if the Guardsman token takes a swing. I'm not exactly sure what the target is, whether it's the recruits or the Goth Boys, but let's see. I'm waiting for shields. I'm waiting to see an assignment of damage tokens. Both players happen to have a more than adequate number of resource tokens to do their Staging Grounds, since that can only be used on a 0, 1, or 2 cost unit. So we see the Goth Boys take a single point of damage, which now makes it impossible for them to be spared via shielding as soon as that Goth Boys has another opportunity to attack, and that effectively kind of seals the fate for these Iron Guard recruits. They're either going to have to be destroyed or take a largely ineffectual swing at one of these lingering Straken-controlled units and then just be destroyed. So let's see how exactly this battle is going to break down here. We've got our players pondering attacks. We've got our players pondering shielding. What are we going to see? I've got no idea what kind of events these players might have in their hands. Certainly Battlecry is an option for our Orc, but all of his Orcish attackers are already exhausted. We end up seeing that copy of Iron Guard recruits take a swing at the Guardsman token. Interesting choice. And now it's going to bring us to the end of the combat round, but actually we see a copy of Staging Ground used. So for 1 resource, that Goth Boys ends up entering play, and Alexander's going to be able to attack. He takes a swing with attack value of 3 to kill off that Iron Guard recruits, which potentially could have attacked, and now it's going to be the onset of a new combat round. Either Trolls is going to retreat, which he wisely does, or he'd have been simply throwing away that unit. So that's going to be another battle won by Alexander here, so very nicely played, and that's going to allow him to rout the unit of his choice. So he's definitely got some fine options. He ends up picking a copy of the Iron Guard recruits, I believe it was, sitting at Aatrox Prime, so now Zogwort is going to have less backup than ever before, and either Zogwart's going to try to press his luck, make sure that combat lasts several rounds, generate a lot of tokens here. Certainly Staging Ground is no longer something to worry about, but what is Zogwort going to do at planet number 3? Looks like Trolls is pondering a retreat, But what are we going to see? The initiative token is in Straken's hand. Straken takes a swing for 2, and Old Zogwort, is he going to end up... It looks like wow, so Old Zogwort is bloodied. Of course, as soon as he is declared a defender, he manages to put a Snotlings token into play, but very nasty. I guess our Orc player must not have had any shields at all, and I guess Zogwort already must have had 5 points of damage on him, so a very hurtful blow indeed. That Snotlings token does happen to be generated. It is going to be able to attack back. It takes a swing at that 4-2 Evil Sun's Warbiker, but we end up seeing a copy of, I'm sorry, I guess for some reason the Evil Sun's Warbiker did end up taking a point of damage. I thought I had seen a copy of No Mercy used as shields. Maybe there was an attack that I missed or something along those lines, but a new combat round starts. The Evil Sun's Warbiker, of course, attacks for maybe... okay. So the Catachan outpost had amplified Straken to being attacking for 4. So Zogwart's bloodied. Evil Sun Warbiker kills off that Talarn Raiders there, and now we only see a Snotlings token, which is destroyed by our Alexander Cimadon player. So it looks as though Aatrox Prime is going to be won by Colonel Straken, and now he's going to be able to... It looks as though he did choose our Zogwort player's HQ in regard to where he wanted Aatrox Prime to fire. So we're not going to be seeing any new planets, but we've got Taurus, we've got Aatrox Prime, Yavvarn, and Karrnath in that order. So Karrnath could put a unit into play, it could do the gain 3 cards or 3 resources thing, it could also cause Aatrox Prime to fire, and things are now looking very favorable indeed in regard to this just wealth of different units we see filling Alexander's board here. The initiative token, of course, passes over to Troes' control, and both players end up generating 4 resources. They draw 2 additional cards, all of their supports are ready. We see a copy of Ammo Depot enter the HQ of Trolls. And what exactly are we going to see from Straken? We've got that Guardsman token and 2 Goth Boys in the HQ of Straken. We've got planet number 1 rather handily held down by Colonel Straken. That Rattling Deadeye is very nasty because even though the initiative token is in the possession of our Orcs player, being able to attack for 3 at ranged with Catachan Outpost on top of everything else is very nasty. Certainly Colonel Straken has access to effects along the lines of Preemptive Barrage, of which we've only seen 1 copy thus far, so I wonder what exactly our Orc player has sitting in his hand. He's drawn a lot of cards, he's generated quite a few resources, he's definitely got quite a few supports in play and everything else. It sucks that his Warlord is bloodied, but so long as he can prevent his Warlord from being outright killed, this game, it could certainly go either way. Looks like Alexander ended up drawing a copy of 2 Arms, which is going to be incredibly nasty considering that Catachan Outpost might be able to trigger twice, and it seems as though at some point Alexander actually got a 2nd copy of Catachan Outpost. So if Zogwort were to touch down at planet number 1, that would be, God, a 7-attack Rattling Deadeye immediately destroying him. But let's see what exactly we see. We saw a copy of Zogwart's Runt Herders put out to planet number 2. We end up seeing an Enraged Orc go to planet number 1, so it's a 0-5 with Brutal. It normally likes when it doesn't actually have initiative. I'm sure our Orc player has no idea just how formidable that Rattling Deadeye could potentially be outside of those 2 Catachan Outposts. So it could be something like the Deadeye takes a shot, the Orc takes 5 points of damage assigned, he shields 1, then it swings back for a ton. But it's not as if the Rattling Deadeye and the Enraged Orc are formidable units. Maybe he just wants that Enraged Orc to be able to kill off something. And of course we end up seeing a copy of the 0-cost limited promotion put onto that Enraged Orc, so that's going to be 3 command icons, allowing him to handily win command at Taurus. So if there's anything that we've seen our Orc player do very, very well here, it's just play that command game. So we ended up seeing, I believe it was a Snotling attack. And where exactly are we going to be seeing these tokens placed? Looks like 2 are going to be at, all 4 are going to be at planet number 1. So looks as though he's definitely playing the numbers game here. We're going to end up seeing Old Zogwort destroy those Snotlings by the end of combat, but whether or not they survive that long remains to be seen. And that Rattling Deadeye, even though it can attack for just a truckload worth of damage, it can't really distribute that damage among multiple targets, and neither of our players are actually running any kind of area effect units here. So Once again, in assessing victory conditions, because Alexander won Farron, he's got one red material type icon. If he wins Taurus and he wins Aatrox Prime, that's going to be the game. Or if at any point he manages to land a killing blow on Old Zogwort, that too will end the game right there. So it's starting to come down to the wire here. Our players are slowly but surely starting to expend some of their resource tokens. We see Trolls on the right with only one resource token remaining. Alexander himself happens to still possess 4. So what exactly are we going to see? Alexander still has quite a few cards. Trolls is trying to decide where he wants to go. Looks as though he has decided. I can only imagine that Straken is probably going to be pushing Taurus, given those 2 Goth boys here. No, I suppose Straken plays it safe and ends up going to Aatrox Prime, as does Zogwort, which is very interesting. So what exactly are we going to see? The initiative token happens to be in Zogwart's hand, and what really sucks at this point is Zogwort has to use his first combat action to retreat his Warlord, otherwise he's in jeopardy of losing the game immediately, and then it's going to be essentially up to Alexander to just run amok and kill off whatever lingering Orc units he happens to have. So things are starting to look all the way bad for our Orc player, but we're going to see a combat at planet number 1, combat at planet number 2. Looks like planet number 1, Trolls ends up getting 1 card, 1 resource. Planet number 2 is going to be going to, I believe, looks like Trolls, so 1 card, 1 resource. 1 resource for Trolls at planet number 4, and of course, 2 resources, 1 card at planet, well, I suppose planet number 5, so I was 1 off there, but I believe it's every single planet the command is 1 for our Zogwort player, so absolutely fantastic showing, just tons of cards, tons of resources coming in for him. But let's see, what are we going to see? There's a ranged skirmish at planet number 1. Looks like the Rattling Deadeye kills off one of those tokens, and if that Enraged Orc doesn't end up taking any points of damage, then Enraged Orc isn't going to be able to end up doing anything. So the Shoot-'em-Mob is destroyed very handily by a Snotling token. The Rattling Deadeye is killed by a Snotling token. Looks as though, I believe Alexander is going to simply allow Taurus to be lost, which is very interesting. I can only imagine that Old Zogwort ended up having more units in play at the present moment. Looks like Alexander is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, relative to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, controlled by Old Zogwort. So definitely not going to be able to benefit from drawing additional cards, additional resources, and having 1 Taurus there is going to be another strong point icon that is very much going to contribute to Zogwort potentially winning the game. So it looks as though the earliest that Zogwort could win is going to be Yvarn, and now it's going to be completely up to Colonel Straken to either try to block off that victory condition or otherwise land the killing blow on Old Zogwort, whether he just happens to have the initiative token or whether he ends up getting another ranged unit into play. So let's see. I suppose if he were to, say, put out 2 Rattling Deadeyes or something to try to corner Old Zogwort, unless we happen to see like a Daka or that Aatrox Prime Fire. Oh my gosh. And we end up seeing a staging ground put into play a Rattling Deadeye at Aatrox Prime, and there's going to be a battle taking place at Aatrox Prime, and those 2 Catachan outposts are looking incredibly nasty in alone being able to augment that Rattling Deadeye up to an attack value of 5. Looks as though we see a battle cry played out to Aatrox Prime by our Orc player, and at this point I'm not exactly sure if that's completely in vain, but we end up seeing Preemptive Barrage. So it looks as though Colonel Straken is going to be gaining range. I believe that can only target Astra Militarum units, but that is just absolutely miserable. We see that copy of 2 arms sitting out there for the god. So Catachan Outpost, 2 copies, both exhaust. Colonel Straken is going to be swinging for 6. We see that 2 arms played. Colonel Straken ends up attacking for 8. I can only imagine that that incredible bit of firepower is going to be directed toward Old Zogwort. Looks as though we've got somebody externally clarifying that Catachan Outpost is absolutely ridiculous. The 2 arms combo is just brutal, and the additional ranged keyword ward conferring preemptive barrage is going to absolutely allow Colonel Straken to just obliterate Old Zogwort. So unless I am gravely mistaken, I believe that this is good game. So very well played by both of our players. It looks like we've ended up seeing this game run to its conclusion through Zogwort being destroyed. Colonel Straken ends up besting our rather competitive Ork Warlord Old Zogwort, so very well played by both of our players. Thank you, as always, to Alexander Cimadon for providing me with this footage in the first place, so congratulations to Alex for our victory. That was absolutely brutal, seeing our snotling-generating Ork Warlord just being crushed and ground into paste. But, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll just end this video by saying, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, and of course, as ever, if you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this content, as the more viewers around YouTube that end up stumbling upon this content, the more likely we are to draw people to this game, expand our community, and all together continue to send the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic product. So, once again, thank you so much for watching. If at any point you'd like me to spectate, commentate, and record a game of your own, feel free to get in touch with me through Twitter or through Facebook, and of course, be it for either Colonel Straken, Old Zogwort, or any other underplayed, underrepresented warlord, I'm always happy to have someone on to do a deck deconstruction video. So, once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.